Hey folks, thanks again for coming to another version of the Heritage Wealth Planning YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about chapter 2 of my book, Strategic Money Planning, 8 Ways to Get Your Financial House in Order. And again, this book isn't quite yet ready to be published. I'm waiting on the Kindle version. Here it is, March 5th of 2018. It should be published in the next week or so. But we're going to talk about chapter 2, which is renting versus buying a home. I have lots of experience in renting versus buying, and I'm going to share with you the pros and cons here in this episode here today. Before we get started, though, I highly encourage you to go to this guy's YouTube channel, Adam Ruins Everything. And this is Adam Ruins Everything Buying a Home. Type that into the YouTube search button. It's only 2 minutes. You can see down here 2 minutes. And he explains why home ownership is actually a terrible investment. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. However, I think this 2-minute video is well worth your time. It's entertaining, it's funny, but at the same time, it shares a lot of important information that I think a lot of people are unaware of. I will tell you, this video has 2.6 million views, and he just did this in September 2016. So obviously, it's resonating well with a lot of YouTubers, if nobody else, that's for sure. 2.6 million views. Now, it's only 2 minutes, so it's not a huge commitment of your time, but I like it. And I think it's a good place to start as you kind of consider your own circumstance about whether you should buy or rent. I'll post a link to this in the show notes down below as well, so if you just happen to forget about it, you just click on the link that I have below. I don't know who this guy is other than I came across this YouTube video, and I just absolutely find it fundamentally important for most people. The old idea of the American dream, where you basically graduate college, you get married, you buy a home, you have kids, that's fine. The old days, though, the idea of the American dream, where you get your quarter-acre plot of land on 3-bed, 2-bath house and whatnot, you put down 20%. And so a lot of people were literally laying down their piece of land where they're going to stay for many years to come. Work at GE and get a pension or something like that. Those days are just over. I mean, there are people doing that, and more power to you. Look, I'm not challenging that, but for me, let me give you an example. We'll see. We moved from Virginia after I graduated from George Mason in 2007. We moved from 1997, excuse me. So 97, we moved from Virginia, my wife and I, to Phoenix. We moved from Phoenix back to Virginia in 2001. We moved from Virginia to Texas in 2008. From Texas to New Jersey in 2011, and New Jersey down here to Milton, Georgia, where I am here today in 2013. So we've moved a number of times. We've had a house that we've purchased each and every time, and thankfully it turned out to be, it worked in our favor, but that could have gone differently very quickly if things had not worked out, and it's just luck. We got lucky. Now, if we were to have rented, could we have done better or worse? I don't know. But I'm going to share with you situations I've heard time and again, and I use them in my book as kind of like a consolidation of various stories I've heard from clients and friends and neighbors and whatnot when it comes to buying a house. For us, thankfully, we were able to sell our house pretty easily. We always sell it at a decent price. We price to sell every time. And then when we move, we don't have a lot to fixing up to do and whatnot. But if you list a house at a decent price, you should sell it. The drawback is what if the property value declined? What if you owe more on the mortgage than the property's worth? As we talked about in my previous video on leverage, you're gonna have to come up with cash to get out from under that house. And if you don't have the cash because your cash flow is tight, as I talked about in the first video on this series, you're going to be in a world of hurt. You have to have the cash in order to come up to get out of the underneath be from negative equity. You got to come up with the cash somehow. And so because of that, thankfully that never happened to us. But I'll tell you, when we moved from Phoenix, we were renting a place in Phoenix, right off Camelback Road, and we're moving back to Virginia. And the situation there was pretty easy. We just told the landlord that, hey, 30 days, we're moving. And, she was kind of shady. She didn't give us our deposit back, which kind of ticked me off because we clean the house like a champ. But that's the one drawback about landlords, by the way, is that they kind of do hold the cards on your security deposit. We didn't get our security deposit back, but we were able to get out of the house without any issues at all. We just told her we're moving, and 30 days later, we're on the road. We get to Virginia, and we're looking for the lay of the land of where we wanted to live, so we rented another house for another year before we found what worked out real well, actually, and turned out to be a great, not investment, but a great home. We had great neighbors and all that. It was a wonderful place to live, and but it took some time to figure that out. So we moved from Virginia, from Arizona back to Virginia. In the interim, we were renting houses, so that way we could be nimble and get up and move when we needed to. Now, the drawback is, when we lived in Virginia, that landlord left a lot to be desired too. We had a sump pump downstairs that would go kaput every time there was a heavy rain. It was just drawing too much on the electrical outlet, and so the electrical outlet just didn't have the capacity to deal with that. And so the basement would flood, had this just nasty smell. I'm sure it was mold, who knew? And we had to call the landlord, say, hey man, you gotta come fix this, and he's gonna fix it when he gets good and ready. And that stinks. We had a leak in one of the upstairs bedrooms. Just it wasn't poured on us, but it was leaking and whatnot. Again, the landlord's gonna get to it when he so feels like it. It's not the best situation, but at the end of the day, when it came time to move, we were able to do so very quickly, and it worked certainly to our favor. Now, let me give you the story that I use in my book, and we talked last time about Brenda and Kevin. And if you recall, Brenda was making the money. She had $50,000 a year in income. Kevin was still going to college, so he was getting his master's degree. But then 2008 came around, and Brenda took a 20% pay cut. All right, you may remember that the company said, Brenda, we all have to take a shared sacrifice. Executives are going to take a 33% pay cut, and we're asking non-executives to take a 20% pay cut. And so now she was only making $40,000 a year. All right, so she was making $50,000. They're just getting by, and if you recall, they had $1,000 of surplus in their cash flow. Well, now with $40,000, they're running deficits of $9,000, $10,000, $11,000 a year, which cannot continue. So Brenda started looking for work, and she found a job that she liked that was a couple states away. It was near Kevin's parents, too. Now, Kevin and Brenda have kids as well, so their parents are stoked. They're like, oh, we get to see the grandparents. And Brenda was stoked because the job was something that she wanted to do anyway. The cost of living in this state, a couple of states over, was a lot cheaper. Because Kevin was a student and most of his classes were online, he could still go online for most of his classes and commute when he needed to come back to school. So it's a wonderful scenario. What's the problem? They have to sell their house. All right? They got to sell their house. Well, what happened in 2008, 2009, and depending on your area, Phoenix, Las Vegas, 2010, 11, 12, is the property values just fell like a brick in water. So now Brenda owed $180,000 on a house that is not going to sell for $180,000. It's only going to sell for $150,000, $140,000. What do? So let's just say they put the house on the market for $180,000, knowing full well that after closing costs, they're going to have to come up with some money just to get out from under it. Remember, they paid $200,000 for it. So in this case, they're not making any money. They're actually going to take a loss. But they're willing to do that because of the job opportunity that awaited Brenda in the state, a couple states over. The problem was there's no buyers. In fact, you might have gone through this exact thing. When you look down residential streets, you'll see for sale sign after for sale sign after for sale sign. What does that mean? That means there's a lot of competition out there, folks. Competition. Supply versus demand. If the supply outweighs the demand, so you got supply up here and demand down here, what happens to the price? Supply, demand. The price drops to meet the demand. Supply and demand, basic economics, my friends. Too much supply, too little demand. The price on the supply has to drop to accommodate the low demand. On the counter to that, the reason that we were talking about this to begin with in the first section of this video series, that Brenda and Kevin paid a hefty price because supply was minimal, but demand was high. So when supply is low and demand's high, the price goes up. So in this case, Brenda and Kevin and countless other Americans, millions of other Americans back in 2004 and 5, paid a premium because they were competing. Because all these banks were giving these ninja loans. Remember, we talked about that. Ninja. No income, no assets or job, ninja loans to anybody who could fog a mirror. So that's the demand is going through the roof, but the housing market still only had a fixed amount of supply, which meant the price was going through the roof. Well, the Great Recession came and it swung just exact opposite. Too much supply, not enough demand. The pricing on these houses dropped, as again, you might be able to attest to. If you're underwater and you're trying to sell this house to take that job that pays you more, that gets closer to your grandparents or your parents so they can be closer to their grandkids, you got to come up with the cash in order to get out from the negative equity. Well, a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck as it is. This wonderful amount of cash that Susie Orman and the like talk about simply doesn't exist out there for most people. Most people don't have 6 to 9 months of living expenses in an emergency account. As much as I wish they did, they don't. And why? Because they're living paycheck to paycheck. And the housing is one of the reasons that happens, because in this case, Brenda and Kevin could not take that job because they were unable to sell their house. And because they were unable to sell the house, they were stuck where they were. They could not advance their livelihood. They could not make more money in a better job. And it's a very, very nerve-wracking thing. And if you've been through that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. A lot of people actually go bankrupt because of that. They say, not only am I not able to get out from my negative equity, but because the job market is so sparse, I've either lost my job or I've had to take a big pay cut and I cannot keep up with the bills that are coming in. I have no other option other than file bankruptcy. Now, if you are renting as opposed to have owned, again, you don't own it, the bank owns it, but you are a name on the deed, but again, the bank has a deed of trust. So if you're renting though, and this were to have happened to Brenda and Kevin, what could they have done? Said, tell the landlord, we're out of here, man. 30 days, here's you keep our stupid security deposit if you need. I mean, again, shady, but whatever. But we're on our way to bigger and better things in that state across, a couple states over. And when we do, we're going to have a different life. I don't want this to be you. I want this to be where you can move to where you are going to be the happiest that you possibly can. That might be in Indiana. That might probably not be in California because it's so doggone expensive there. It might be in Virginia. It might be in Texas. I don't know. I don't care. But don't just fall for this idea that the American dream means you have to buy a house. Because when you're buying a house, like my man Adam here says, you are chaining yourself down. You literally are. You're chaining yourself down to that property under the hope that you'll be able to sell it for a better price than what you paid for it whenever you need to sell it. Folks, if you ever hear from me, one thing I'll say is hope is not a financial planning strategy. Hope is not financial planning. We certainly can hope, but we need to prepare for the worst. And one of the worst things that could happen is that you're stuck in a house that you can't afford and you have no income coming in because you took a job loss. That's doomsday scenario financially for sure. Now, with renting, the couple things going on there for sure. You got the crazy landlord. You can't make changes to the house. Like I'm looking outside now. I own this house. Well, the bank owns it. I own a portion. But if I want to install a walkway, if I want to install a garden, grow beds or something like that, plant a couple apple trees and mulberry trees or whatnot, I can't take those trees with me. I certainly can't take any hardscape that I do for my landscaping. Your grow boxes, you probably could, but whatever. At the end of the day, there are some limitations there. But in terms of financial nimble flexibility, renting is certainly a path to choose for sure. Now, lastly, please don't take this that I'm telling you not to buy. I'm not saying that in the least. What I am saying is try to get equity, try to have cash money on the side, something that you can borrow, use against, take out of an account of some sort. So that way, if you do find that job, across the country or across the state or wherever you need to move, and you can't find enough equity from a potential buyer, you're able to come up with cash to get out from under it. So if you do buy, that's fine. Just do whatever you can to try to have cash available so that you can use that money to help with closing costs, to help with a further mortgage or whatnot. You can't borrow on a credit card when it comes trying to sell a house, because if you're going to buy a new house in a different part of the country, they're going to say, where did all this debt come from? So credit is off the table when it comes to buying a new home in the midst of when you're trying to sell an old one. You can't take on more debt because your bank is debt to income is going to go through the roof, and your bank won't let you borrow that. So keep that in mind. You need cash. Cash is king. Cash is what puts food on the table. Only cash can pay the bills, and only cash can come to the closing if you're underwater or upside down with negative equity and you need to come up with $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to get out from under that house. All right, so I hope this was beneficial to you. Comments down below, please. I need to hear them. I love hearing comments about what people have gone through. Maybe you had an instance, a story to share. I'm telling you, other people watch this stuff. How do we know? Because look at this, 2.6 million people watch Adam's little 2-minute video here. This is top of the mind for other people in the United States and probably worldwide. What stories do you have that you can share? Put them down below. You can certainly do it anonymously. Absolutely. Comments. I mean, just tell the world what happened to you and what they should be prepared for. I don't have all the answers, but you and me, we can work together and help each other out. Secondly, always don't forget to hit that red subscribe button. And you can see down here for old Adam. Let me see if I can't bring that down. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to show it. But anyway, there's a red button down there for Adam that says subscribe 1.3 M. That means he's got 1.3 million subscribers. So he's got a pretty active YouTube channel. But the red button just says subscribe. And again, as I always say, that just means you're signed up for further content that I produce. And don't forget to hit the notification. Yeah, it's not, you can't see that. I don't believe. No. So there's a little bell for notification. That just means you'll be notified via YouTube and via your email anytime I produce new content. And my goal is to produce content literally every day. I got this book to talk about. Probably another 10 videos of various things I'm going to talk about in this book. My next book, 21 Reasons You Should or You Need a Roth IRA, will come out. There's at least 21 different YouTube videos on that. So I'm looking forward to sharing that as well. But if there's something you want me to talk about, to research, by all means, just post them down below or just email me directly. Thanks, guys. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.